The story will be told from the perspective of the main female character.
The Mediterranean sun was going down behind me as I stood on the boat deck in my cream-colored dress. I was ready to say my vows again. That was when my father-in-law walked up to me. He handed me an envelope and said, "Sign these right now, Mia." He did it right in front of everyone. Inside, I found divorce papers and a check for $75,000. He expected me to fall apart and cry. He had no clue that I had built something worth $5.3 million, while he spent 5 years telling me I wasn't good enough. Let me go back a bit. 5 years ago, I married my husband in a tiny wedding that his family almost didn't attend. His mother was nice enough, but his father made it clear he hated the match from day one. His father was a retired banker who judged every person by their bank account and their job title. I was a Pilates instructor. At our rehearsal dinner, he called my job a little hobby instead of a career. My husband squeezed my hand under the table, but he didn't say anything. I should have noticed that habit back then. My husband worked 80 hours a week as a corporate lawyer. He was just trying to reach the high goals his father set for him. I taught Pilates at a small boutique, making enough to pay my own way, but it wasn't impressive to his family. At our holiday dinners, his father would ask when I planned to get a real job. His wife would quickly try to talk about something else. His sister had married a surgeon, and his father talked about that constantly. They just bought their second house, his father mentioned at Thanksgiving during our first year of marriage. "What do you two have going on? Are you still living in that rental?" My husband just mumbled something about saving up some money. I kept my mouth shut. By the second year, the insults got even worse. His father started comparing me to my husband's ex-girlfriend, a girl named Ashley. She was supposedly some big marketing boss at a huge company. His father said she understood why making money was important. He would say, "She had real drive." I had drive too, but his father couldn't see it because he was too busy looking down his nose at me. What his father didn't know was that I started teaching Pilates classes online 8 months after our wedding. It was just a few people at the start who found me on social media, but I was really good at making health easy for people. I made routines that busy people could actually finish. My classes weren't about having the best gear or perfect form. They were about taking care of yourself when life got stressful. By our 4th year, I had 4,500 people paying for my subscription. I had created an app with workout guides, food plans, and a group forum. I worked on it every single morning before my husband got up and every night after he went to sleep. He knew I was doing some teaching on the internet, but he had no idea how big it really was. I stopped telling him about my success because he would just tell his father. Then his father would find a way to make it sound small. The business wasn't just doing okay, it was exploding. I had deals with mental health groups and corporate fitness programs. A big wellness company had even reached out to buy me out, but I kept that a secret. Part of me wanted to show I could build a huge company without needing anyone to tell me I did a good job. Another part of me was testing my husband to see if he would love me even if his father didn't like me. He was failing that test. By year 5, my husband barely even touched me. He came home from the office, ate his food in total silence and spent his nights on the phone with his father. I could hear him through his office door. "I know, Dad, I know she should want more. I don't know what to do about it," he would say. That was when his father came up with the idea for the vow renewal. "Your 6th anniversary is coming up," he said during a Sunday meal. "Why don't we do something big? A cruise through the Mediterranean? The whole family can go. You can renew your vows the right way this time." His wife thought it was very sweet. His sister was happy about the vacation. My husband looked at me like he wasn't sure, and I said yes. I wanted to believe this was him finally accepting me. I thought maybe we could start over. I was being so dumb. The cruise started on a Tuesday in June. We got on the ship in Barcelona. Along with us were my husband's father, his mother, his sister, and her husband, Scott. There were also about 45 of his father's closest friends and business partners on board. The plan was to spend 7 days traveling through the Mediterranean and end the trip in Rome. That is where we were supposed to renew our vows on the deck at sunset. On the first day, I should have realized something was wrong. My husband's father barely said a word to me during dinner. He was too busy talking to a woman named Victoria. He introduced her as a brilliant CEO in the health and wellness world. She ran a tech company that helped big corporations build better health programs for the people who worked for them. Victoria just finished a $35 million funding round, my father-in-law announced very loudly to the table. This is the kind of business spirit that I really admire. Victoria looked very polished and professional. She smiled at me in a polite way and asked me what I did for a living. Before I could even open my mouth to answer her, my father-in-law cut me off. Mia teaches Pilates. It's a nice little hobby, he said. My husband didn't say a word. He just kept staring down at his glass of wine. Victoria's face changed for a second. She looked like she felt sorry for me maybe, but she just nodded and changed the subject. On the second day, my father-in-law made sure Victoria joined our family trip in Marseille. She walked through the old port with us. My husband's father kept hitting her with questions about her business strategy, how she made her money, and what her plans were for growing the company. Every time she answered, he beamed with pride, acting like she was his own daughter. My husband walked right next to her. He was talking a lot and seemed very excited, which was something I hadn't seen from him in months. I walked about 10 feet behind them with my mother-in-law. She kept apologizing to me. His father means well, she whispered to me. He just wants the best for his son. I looked at her and said quietly, I am what is best for him. She didn't have a response for that. On the third day, I found my husband and Victoria having coffee together on the upper deck. They did not see me standing there. I watched him laugh at something she said. It was a real, genuine laugh. I felt something crack inside my chest right then. It wasn't exactly jealousy. It felt more like I was just giving up. I had been trying to compete with this idea of what my husband's wife should be, and I realized I was never going to win that fight. That afternoon, I received an email on my phone. The large wellness corporation had sent over their final offer to buy me out. They were offering $5.3 million for my business, my app, and my entire brand. They wanted me to stay on as the creative director for 3 years. The deal included full benefits and stock options. I sat there in my cabin and read that email 3 times. Tears were streaming down my face. I had built something truly remarkable. I had proven that I was more than just a hobby. But the sad part was that nobody in my husband's family would ever know it, because they had already made up their minds about who I was. On the 4th day, my father-in-law called me into his cabin. I thought he wanted to talk about the vow renewal ceremony. I thought maybe we would talk about what to wear or what time things were starting. Instead, he was sitting in a big armchair with a leather folder on his lap. Mia, I am going to be direct with you, he said to me. This is not working out. You and my son are not a good match for each other. I have watched him become a shell of himself over these last 5 years. My throat felt very tight. I told him, I think that is something between my husband and me. He shook his head. He won't do what needs to be done. He is too kind, so I am doing it for him. He opened up the leather folder and pulled out a stack of papers. These are divorce papers. I had our family lawyer draw them up, he said. Then he pulled out a check. And this is a check for $75,000. Think of it as pay for your time and a reason to move on quickly. I just stared at the papers and then looked at him. You are bribing me to divorce your son, I said. He replied, I am offering you a dignified way out. Sign these, take the money, and go live your life. Find someone who is a better match for you. My son can find someone who actually understands the world he lives in, someone like Victoria. He didn't even look ashamed of himself. He said, she is a great example of the kind of woman he should be with, someone with ambition, someone who actually builds things. I felt something very cold settle in my stomach. This man had no idea who I was. He had spent 5 years looking at me and only seeing his own biased ideas. When would you like me to sign these? I asked him very quietly. He looked surprised that I was being so calm. The vow renewal ceremony is on day 6, he said. I think it would be right for you to make an announcement then in front of everyone. Show this family that you respect what they need. I looked at him and asked, You want me to announce my divorce at my own vow renewal ceremony? He answered, I want you to be honest about the fact that this marriage was a mistake. Do it with dignity, Mia. Don't make this any harder than it has to be. I stood up and told him, I will think about it. He said, There is nothing to think about. This is what is best for everyone. You will see that eventually. I walked back to my room and sat on my bed for a long time. Then I opened my laptop. I typed an email to the Wellness Corporation. I wrote, I accept your offer. Please prepare the paperwork. The 5th day finally arrived. The ceremony for our vow renewal was set for 6 in the evening on the main deck. I spent the whole morning inside my cabin, practicing exactly what I wanted to say. I didn't want to speak out of anger or bitterness, I just wanted to tell the truth. I put on the cream-coloured dress that I had bought specifically for this occasion. It was simple and elegant, nothing too flashy. I did my own hair and makeup. When I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman who had spent 5 years trying to make herself smaller, quieter, and more acceptable to others. Looking at my reflection, I knew I was done with all of that. My husband knocked on my door at 5:30. You look beautiful, he told me, but there was no real emotion in his voice. It was just a plain observation. Thank you, I said. Then I added, I need to tell you something before we go up there. I know about the divorce papers. Your father already spoke to me. His face went completely white. He did what? He asked. I told him. He showed them to me yesterday. He offered me a check for $75 to sign them at the ceremony tonight. My husband sat down hard on the edge of the bed. Oh my God, he said. I didn't know he was going to do that. I swear I didn't know. I looked at him and said, But you knew he wanted me gone. You've known that for a long time. He couldn't even look me in the eye. He thinks we'd both be happier, he muttered. He thinks maybe he's right. There it was, the truth I had been avoiding for months. I asked him, Do you love me? He was silent for a very long moment. I don't know anymore, he finally said. I look at women like Victoria, women who are building empires and changing entire industries, and I wonder what it would be like to be with someone like that. Someone my father actually respects. Someone who makes me feel proud when I introduce her. I asked him, So I've never made you proud? He replied, You're a Pilates instructor, Mia. It's just not the same thing. I nodded my head slowly. Okay, I said, let's go upstairs. The deck had been turned into something truly beautiful. There were white flowers everywhere, along with candles and glass holders. They had set up a small arch decorated with silk ribbons. All 45 guests were there in their fancy clothes, holding champagne glasses and smiling. My mother-in-law looked very nervous. My sister-in-law looked uncomfortable. My father-in-law looked triumphant. The chaplain my father-in-law had hired welcomed everyone and began talking about what marriage means, about commitment, and about choosing each other again after years together. I barely heard a word he said. I was focused on the envelope in my father-in-law's jacket pocket. I could see the edge of it very clearly. After about 10 minutes of the ceremony, before we even got to the actual vows, my father-in-law stepped forward. Excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt, he said, though he didn't sound sorry at all. But I think there's something that needs to be addressed before we continue. He looked right at me. Mia, you had something you wanted to share with everyone. The deck went completely silent. My husband closed his eyes. My mother-in-law put her hand to her mouth. I took a deep breath. Yes, actually, I do have something to share, I said. My father-in-law pulled the envelope out of his pocket and held it out to me, looking very confident and smug. Go ahead, he said. I didn't take his envelope. Instead, I reached into my small bag and pulled out my own envelope, the one I had printed that morning in the ship's business center. For the past 5 years, I said, my voice staying steady and clear, I've been building something. I started small, just teaching a few online Pilates classes to people who needed health support but couldn't afford expensive studios. It grew. I built an app. I created meditation programs and food guides. I built a community of thousands of people who were struggling with stress and burnout. My father-in-law's smile began to fade. A few guests looked confused. My husband opened his eyes. I did this while I was working at the boutique, while I was making dinner, and while I was trying to be a good wife to a man whose family never thought I was enough. I continued. I didn't tell anyone because I wanted to see if I could do it without anyone's approval. I wanted to see if I could build something meaningful without needing permission. I opened my envelope and pulled out the letter of intent. 3 months ago, I was approached by a major wellness corporation. They want to buy my business, my app, and my brand. I looked directly at my father-in-law. This morning, I accepted their offer, $5.3 million. The deck erupted. People were gasping and whispering to one another. My father-in-law's face went from smug to completely shocked. My husband just stared at me with his mouth open. Victoria stood up from her seat near the back of the group. "Wait, you are Mia?" she asked. She started walking toward me and I saw a look on her face that I finally recognized. "I have been trying to get a hold of you for 8 months," she said. "I am the CEO who sent you that offer." Now it was my turn to be completely shocked. "You are the head of that wellness corporation?" I asked. "Yes," she said, standing right in front of me with a smile. "Your app is incredible. The way you built that community and made health easy for people without all the fake positivity or the crazy prices, it's exactly what this industry needs. I have been trying to partner with you or buy your company since last fall." "I didn't realize it was you," I said. "My business manager handles most of the corporate emails." My husband's voice sounded very weak when he spoke up. "You have a business manager?" Victoria turned to look at him and then at his father. "Wait, you people really didn't know?" she asked. She looked back at me. "They had no idea what you built." I told her. I didn't tell them. They had already decided I was just a Pilates instructor with a little hobby. "A hobby?" Victoria laughed, but she didn't sound happy. "She has built one of the fastest growing health platforms in the entire country. Her user numbers are unlike anything I've ever seen. I've been studying her business model for months just to figure out how she does it." She looked straight at my father-in-law. "And you have been treating her like she isn't good enough." My father-in-law finally found his voice. "I didn't know about any business," he snapped. "How was I supposed to know if she never said anything about it?" I looked him in the eye and said, "You never asked. In 5 years you never once asked about my work with any real interest. You asked me when I was going to get a real job. You asked if I wanted to go back to school. You compared me to my husband's ex-girlfriend and his sister's husband, but you never once asked about my actual work." My mother-in-law was crying now. His sister, Megan, looked very ashamed. My husband was just staring at the floor of the deck. I pulled out the divorce papers his father had given me the day before. "You wanted me to sign these tonight in front of everyone to show this family that I respect what they need," I said. I pulled out a pen and clicked it. "So I'm going to do exactly that." "Mia, wait," my husband said. "I didn't listen. I signed my name on every single page that needed a signature. My hand didn't shake at all. When I was finished, I handed the papers back to my father-in-law. "You were right about one thing," I told him. "This marriage was a mistake, but it wasn't because I'm not good enough. It was because I spent 5 years trying to get approval from people who had already decided I was worthless. I built an empire while you were busy telling me I had a hobby, and my husband just stood there and let it happen." I turned to my husband. "I wanted you to love me even when your father didn't approve. I wanted you to see my value even when I had nothing to prove it with. That was the test and you failed it. I don't need a man who only respects me when I have a multi-million-dollar deal." I turned back to Victoria. "If your offer still stands, I want to accept it. I want to start immediately, which means I'll be leaving this ship when we dock in Naples tomorrow morning." "The offer absolutely still stands," Victoria said. "And for what it's worth, I know exactly what it feels like to be underestimated. If you ever want to talk about business strategy or just need a friend who gets it, here is my direct number." She pulled a business card out of her bag and handed it to me. I looked at all the guests. They were all staring at me with shock and discomfort. "Thank you all for coming tonight," I said. "I'm sorry the ceremony didn't go as planned. Please enjoy the champagne." I walked off the deck. The crowd moved out of the way to let me pass. I went down the stairs to my room. Behind me I could hear everyone starting to talk at once. I heard my father-in-law shouting and my husband calling my name, but I didn't turn around. I packed my bags that night. When the ship docked in Naples the next morning, I was the very first person to get off. I rolled my suitcase behind me and carried my laptop bag on my shoulder. I didn't say goodbye to a single person. My mother-in-law had slid a note under my door apologizing, but it was too late for that. I flew home and spent a week working with Victoria's legal team on the sale. I signed the final papers 2 weeks after I left that cruise. I had $5.3 million in my bank account and a 3-year contract as a creative director, along with stock options. But more than that, I had proof that what I built mattered. The first thing I did with the money was start a non-profit called the Dignified Exit Foundation. It gives grants to women who need help paying for therapy, fitness classes, or nutritionists. I named it that because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is just walk away. My husband called me 47 times in the first month. I blocked him after the 12th call. He sent emails with apologies and asked for a second chance. I deleted every single one of them. He couldn't understand that the problem wasn't just that one night on the boat. It was 5 years of being invisible to him. It was 5 years of watching him choose his father's opinion over my dignity. His father tried to apologize through his wife. She invited me to lunch 8 weeks after Naples. She spent 2 hours telling me how he had been wrong and how he wanted to make things right. I listened politely and then I said, "He offered me $75,000 to divorce his son because he thought I wasn't good enough. Not because I was mean or unfaithful, but because I taught Pilates. That isn't something you just make right. That's just who he is." His sister Megan sent me a text too. "I'm sorry I didn't speak up," she wrote. "I knew my dad was wrong, but I didn't want to cause trouble. Watching you walk away made me realize how small I have been making myself too." I replied to her, "Then stop doing it. Life is too short to act small for people who should be celebrating how big you are." 8 months after Naples, I was in New York for a big health industry conference. I was giving the main speech about building a business focused on community. The room was packed with about 1,200 people. I was backstage looking at my notes when I heard some noise in the hallway. My husband and his father had somehow gotten backstage passes. They were arguing with the security guards. I told the guards to let them in. I didn't want to see them, but I wanted them to see me. They walked into the room. My husband looked thinner and very tired. His father looked much older and smaller than I remembered. "Mia," my husband started, "I know I shouldn't be here, but I had to see you. I'm so sorry for everything." I told him calmly, "I appreciate that, but I am going on stage in 10 minutes and I need to focus." "I left the law firm," he said. "I'm working at a legal aid office now for families who don't have much money. I realized I was living my father's life instead of my own. I wanted you to know that you leaving changed everything for me." I told him, "I'm glad you figured that out, I really am, but it doesn't change the past." His father stepped forward. "I owe you a real apology," he said. "I was completely wrong about you. I let my own bias and my fear for my son's future blind me. You built something amazing and I tried to break you for it. I am sorry." I looked at him for a long time. "Thank you for saying that," I replied. "But you need to understand something. Your judgment of me was never actually about me. It was about your own narrow view of success. I accept your apology, but I don't need it. I didn't build my business for you. I did it for myself and for the people who needed it." An assistant knocked on the door and said, "You are on in 5 minutes." I walked past them toward the stage. At the door, I turned back one last time. "I hope you find real happiness," I told my husband. "And I hope you learn that a person's worth isn't about money," I told his father. "Your wife deserves better than a man who thinks that way." I didn't wait for them to say anything. I walked out onto the stage and into the lights. 1,200 people started clapping. I smiled and took a breath. "Good evening," I began. "My name is Mia, and I want to tell you about the time I was told I had a hobby by someone who couldn't imagine that hobbies can become empires." The crowd laughed. I saw Victoria in the front row looking proud. I saw my team and people from my old boutique who flew out to be there. I saw strangers whose lives had been changed by my app. I didn't see my husband or his father in the crowd, and I didn't look for them. After the speech and the dinner, I went back to my hotel and looked at the city skyline. My phone buzzed with an email from Megan. "I quit my job today," she wrote. "I'm going back to school for the degree I actually wanted. Thank you for showing me it's possible." I replied, "I'm proud of you. Go build your empire." The divorce was finished 2 weeks later. I took back my maiden name. I was Mia, the founder of one of the biggest health platforms in the country. I was the woman who was called a hobby and became an empire. I learned that the best revenge isn't proving people wrong. It's building a life where their opinion doesn't matter at all. I never spoke to them again. I heard from his mother that my husband eventually married someone else that his father liked. I truly hope they are happy. As for me, I eventually started dating again. I met someone who asked about my work on our very first date and actually listened. He introduced me to his family as an entrepreneur and said it with pride. He never needed me to prove my worth because he saw it from the start. But that's a different story. This story is about the night I signed divorce papers at a vow renewal and showed everyone I had a $5.3 million business. It's about learning that you don't need permission to be great. And if someone hands you divorce papers thinking it's your worst nightmare, just sign them, thank them, and walk away. They just gave you your freedom.